Welcome back to the FreeMelon Society, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Eli Martyr. We're going to be continuing with part B of part 3 of our Hijacker series, the Hijacking of Veganism. So, no need for any kind of introductory comments. Let's just jump right back into it. Okay, so we left off talking about veganism and why veganism is very attractive as a philosophy, as a moral stance, as an ideology, why it's very attractive for the UN globalist movement to adopt as a position that they uphold and advocate for the population. Okay, so in this final part, all we're going to be doing is just touching on a couple more ideas, and then we will finish off this series. Okay, so, and just to show you that I'm like so totally vegan, I'm wearing green because green is like vegan, right? Okay, clean meat. You are going to hear more and more and more about clean meat products. There is an inestimably vast quantity of money being siphoned into the clean meat industry right now. And there's this website that I've got listed here that does a good job of summarizing the whole clean meat issue. So first of all, what is clean meat? And reading from the article, clean meat is a term being used to describe an emerging category of new animal meat products. Unlike conventional meat, which is obtained by raising and killing animals, clean meat, it's also called cellular or cultured or synthetic meat, is created in a laboratory or a biovat using cells that are taken from a living animal without causing harm to the animal. Through a complex bioengineering process, the cells are grown into slabs of muscle and fat tissue, gross, and actual animal flesh, but grown without a living animal, okay? So it's laboratory grown meat. All right, that's what we're talking about when we talk about clean meat. Of course, the term clean is used to denote a moral value. Okay, it has definitely nothing to do with the fact that what you're eating is clean or healthy for you. But of course, this little bit of, again, it's always word play and semantics and weaponizing English. Double meanings, conflated terms. You hear clean meat, your mind hears clean meat. It is disgusting, synthetic, lab-grown garbage. So no, it's not clean. It is synthetic, processed, organic tissue from a lab. That is not clean at all, of course. But that's what you subconsciously hear. Just wanted to say that because it's offensive to the intellect. I'm like, my goodness, clean meat. It's not clean. It's laboratory sludge. That's what it's designed to do. It's designed to give you your subconscious impressions about what it is, even if that is the wrong impression, right? Anyway, sorry about that. Sorry for going on about that. What is the Clean Meat Lobby? The Clean Meat Lobby is an emerging alliance. Okay, so we're talking an alliance, all right? I'll go through this very slowly so that we get it. It's an alliance between capitalist entrepreneurs, big meat, and animal welfare advocates who are selling new synthetic flesh technologies as the solution to the problems of animal culture. Okay? A former PETA vice president named Bruce Friedrich is at the center of much of this advocacy through his work with the Good Food Institute, which is a nonprofit that he founded to promote clean meat as well as vegan meat products, and with New Crop Capital and Clear Current Capital, which are venture capitalist funds, which Friedrich also founded and now advises. Okay, basically what we're taking away from this is that the clean meat lobby is interfacing with big meat animal agriculture and animal welfare groups and harmonizing the two so that they all have a very comfy, cozy, profitable relationship. Okay, that's what's important. Friedrich, as well as some of the entrepreneurs involved in clean meat research or production, have at times expressed their hope that clean meat will one day come to replace meat from animals raised in factory farms in the name of improving sustainability, food safety, and animal welfare. Okay. However, It's difficult to know how seriously to take such sentiments given the lobbies, which is the clean meat lobby, given the lobby's cozy relationship with the meat industry. Lobbying. What do we mean by lobbying? So I can just Google lobbying politically, and we get in politics, lobbying or advocacy is the act of lawfully attempting, I don't know about lawfully, but the act of lawfully attempting to influence actions, policies, or decisions of government officials, most often legislators or members of regulatory agencies, but also judges of the judiciary. If an industry has a lobby for that industry, it means that that industry has a group of individuals, a lobby, okay, a group of individuals who are responsible for trying to bribe, swindle, influence governmental legislators, okay, lawmakers, to make laws, pass laws that are beneficial for the industry's profits. That's what a lobby does. A lobby is like an interface between the government and the lawmakers and the industry, and the lobbyists try to actually change the laws of the land to suit corporate interests. And that's what a lobby does. Okay, so difficult to know how seriously to take these sentiments given this lobby's cozy relationship with the meat industry. So now the Good Food Institute has aggressively helped to broker investments in clean meat technology from some of the biggest players in agribusiness, including such multi-billion-dollar behemoths as Cargill, Tyson, and Purdue. Okay, those names should ring a bell because those are massive, massive, massive food producers invested in animal agriculture. So this clean meat lobby now is getting tons of money in investments from these groups. So we want to ask why. The latter seem most interested in exploiting the new technology to diversify their existing protein portfolios, not in using it to transition away from factory farming. These massive animal agriculture companies are investing heavily into vegan products and especially clean meat. You'll probably see a lot more of this pop up in the future, but they're investing into these groups because they simply want to diversify their portfolios and make more money. But in order to do that, if you're working with the clean meat lobby, you still need to exploit animals. You still need to have animal exploitation on the menu. Now, as for the motivations of the investors funding the new clean meat startups, New Crop Capital's chief investment office, Chris Kerr, put it best when he told one potential corporate partner, "We will be rich no matter what." And just to put it clearly, why is the vegan industry seen as attractive for meat production companies, big meat production companies? For agribusiness and animal killers like Cargill and Tyson, investing in clean meat startups as well as in vegan food companies make good business sense for three reasons. It allows them to greenwash their violent enterprises under the cover of sustainability, compassion, all those Orwellian euphemisms that vegans just love to be labeled with. You guys just love to read these silly front page Google search articles on issues like these and see words like sustainability and compassion. You're doing the right thing by buying clean meat and being so vegan. Number two, it hedges against future risk by giving the meat industry growing strategic influence and advantage over the vegan market, and even indirectly over the animal rights movement itself, at a time when animal agriculture is more and more associated with global ecological breakdown. And thirdly, it helps to ensure the future dominance of the market in animal products by creating a diverse portfolio of emerging quote-unquote protein products. Yeah, I think people use that as an unconscious distancing from the mental guilt associated with eating meat. If the average person is describing what they had for dinner, maybe they'll just say, yeah, I had some baked potatoes, I had some broccoli, and a little protein. Just a little protein, right? What is that, a little protein? You just gave me foods that were on your dinner plate, and then you said, oh, and some protein. I'm like, what? The broccoli and the sweet potatoes were protein. There's protein in everything. Anyway, it's a silly thing that humans are doing with language when they describe food these days. I don't understand it. No. I'm frustrated because I do understand it, I guess. Anyway, getting back to this lecture. Okay. So just remember, the agribusiness companies, they do not want to do anything noble. Their goal is not to feed the world high quality protein. What they want to do, and indeed what they are required to do by law, is to earn profits for their shareholders, and how they go about doing that is considered irrelevant to their bottom line. So in terms of this new emerging field of cellular meat, lab-grown meat, clean meat, of course, that's an oxymoron. If you're comforted by this new growing business, which again has millions and millions of dollars being funneled into it, if you're comforted by this prospect, you shouldn't be, because for one reason, it does not work towards the end of animal exploitation. It works to work with it and maybe minimize the scale of direct animal exploitation, but it will still require us to have the same attitude. See, it's the attitude. It's the ideology that doesn't change. It's still the same attitude of using animals, dominating animals, and just using them as some source material for lab-grown products. So nothing changes, okay? So you heard me talk in the previous lesson about how one of the reasons why the control architects are urging plant-based meat alternatives is because if plant-based meaty tasting chemicals can simulate the sensory experience of eating unnecessarily murdered bodies, then it may be more financially viable to opt for those plant-based strategies as opposed to conventional animal agriculture, right? So you heard me talk about that in the previous lecture. And yes, for those companies willing to, or maybe already have the infrastructure set up that allows them to transition into plant-based strategies, this is something that they might want to do, right? However, here we're seeing almost a resistance giving up animal exploitation by an already established meat industry willing to capitalize on the idea of clean meat, quote unquote clean meat, if it allows them to continue to do business with a fictitious ethical path. So at the outset, right, for you guys listening, it might be a bit confusing, right? If the push by this massive environmentalist government cult is to go mock meat plant food, okay, which undeniably could technically produce more food in quantity for a similar amount of money than animal agriculture can, okay? So why are we also at the same time seeing a meat industry gearing up to keep the wheels turning, right? So yeah, some of you might be confused, right? What's this contradiction? So remember, guys, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to read between the lines, okay, and get through all the noise that we hear at the surface level and glean what's happening. So this is a new emerging field, and so how these elements are working with one another, these things may evolve over time, right? But right now, we're just doing the best we really can to try and take all this in and present it to you in a way that is digestible. Okay, so in reconciling these two directions of impetus, it takes us back to the lesson that we learned in part 1. So, surprise, surprise, we always seem to have to circle back to evil and the tried, tested, and true tactics of manipulation, right? And if you guys know where I'm going with this, it'll be familiar really fast. And you'll be like, oh yeah, of course, right? Now, I could go on endlessly with examples, but we'll settle on just one. Communism. We learned in part 1 that the dark elite have such unbelievable vision, patience, drive, financing, resources, and will to create a massive, globally influential economic system just for the utility it would serve in polarizing the world, okay? The tensions between conflicting dual elements fracturing the ideologies, okay? Setting our thinking into different camps, and those different camps can war against each other, and that war and conflict and tension between polarized things, these architects of control love that, and they've recognized that it is only in that conflict of opposite fractured camps that they can step in and act as the synthesis, as the solution. When you want to control the outcome, what do? You control both sides. You pour your energy into both camps. So it seems that you've got one side that is interested in perpetuating animal exploitation, yeah, and another that does not. So just like how communism worked and works to this day, the elite control both sides. Also, both sides profit off one another, which is what you're seeing here. And both will serve to cause confusion, fracture minds with distracting scientific claptrap and mumbo-jumbo reasoning and obfuscation, create decades of useless, time-wasting debates between experts on either side, arguing about issues that are of no real consequence. So it's just blah, 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 all this nonsense. And all of this can be avoided if you just stop playing the game entirely. And you stop playing the game entirely by not supporting with your dollars any of these two polarized camps. Become a true vegan, okay? In other words, a true human being, a naturalized human being whose mind and body are reformed to accept actual food as grown by nature and nature's intelligence. An intelligence that you cannot ever, in any stretch of the imagination, replicate in any conceivable way in a lab, okay? Anyone telling you this has no clue what they're talking about. Okay, so there are reasons not to play this game, right? Check this out. So this is an article called Clean Meat is Neither. We Can and Must Do Better. It's an article from the Sustainable Food Trust, and it goes on. Special mention should be made on lab-grown meats, the techiest of the high-tech faux meats. Despite investor giddiness, the cost and practicality of creating lab conditions to culture meat is in itself a serious problem that may never be overcome. But the yuck factor is even more grave. An in-depth industry profile in Wired magazine in 2018 noted, the sector has a messy problem. None of the major players have managed to grow meat without using animal serum, a blend of growth-inducing proteins usually made from the blood of animals. The most popular is fetal bovine serum, FBS, a mixture harvested from the blood of fetuses, excised from pregnant cows slaughtered in the dairy or meat industries. Lab meat is now creating a high demand for this serum. Recently, I heard that some U.S. slaughterhouses now offer incentives for farmers and ranchers to bring cull cows to slaughter pregnant. This makes my heart hurt and my stomach ache. And so currently, right now, all the companies that are claiming quote-unquote clean meat, this is just my words now, they all have this issue where they need a medium to grow this Frankensteinian tissue. And fetal bovine serum is what they need in order to do that because, again, we can't play God. We need to use life to create life. People that convince you that they can actually create life from nothing, science is not as clever as they would fool you into believing they are. Okay.
The first lab-grown burger was eaten in 2013, and since then, it has been a race to market for dozens of food tech startups. Lab-grown or cultured meats use practices from regenerative science to grow meat without needing to grow an animal. It all starts with stem cells. Stem cells are a special type of cell that have the potential to become almost any type of cell found in the body. Skin cell, muscle cell, liver cell, etc. To harvest stem cells, technicians have to go to the primary source of the desired meat, directly to the cow. Here they take a sample of tissue directly from the animal, without killing it or even harming it. From this tissue, they then isolate multipotent stem cells, such as muscle stem cells. These are put into a bioreactor with a mixture of nutrients, amino acids, growth hormones, and a special serum called FBS. FBS prevents the replicating stem cells from committing suicide. FBS works almost completely universally. When added to any type of cell, that cell will start to replicate and grow. Other serums do exist, but none are so versatile. As of now, FBS is the essential ingredient to lab-grown meat, an ingredient that completely defeats the purpose of artificial meat. In fact, it's probably even worse than the traditional slaughterhouse. To make a single lab-grown beef burger, an estimated 50 liters of bovine serum is needed. And depending on age, a single cow fetus can yield between 150 and 550 milliliters of serum. That means to create a single burger, you need the blood of between 90 and 333 cow fetuses. Until a synthetic or plant-based alternative to FBS is found, slaughter-free, widely available lab-grown meat is completely unfeasible.
Article continues, Ethan Brown, founder of Beyond Meat, is convinced his formulation offers a more perfect food than nature provides, which is, of course, nonsense. It's arrogance. It's utter arrogance. And in a recent interview with Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, his spokesperson said, improving human health is a core tenet of our brand, which, of course, is not possible with these products. You will impair human health. In response to such assertions, a flurry of articles have evaluated faux meat's health claims. Nearly all have concluded that this generation of meat substitutes cannot legitimately be called healthy. Now, there is little debate that these products should be labeled processed, and a number of nutrition experts call them ultra-processed. The best-known faux meat companies in the United States have genetically modified components and over 20 total ingredients. Their proteins are isolates extracted mechanically from whole soy and peas. Their fats are industrial vegetable and seed oils, notes a recent article in the New Republic. And the article goes on to suggest that these new meat alternatives may even deserve their own uber-processed category. Now, if I'm playing the conventional game, all right, I'm just your average, ill-informed person of the world with no true nutritional principles, right? Is the future of food science completely bleak in terms of laboratory meat or quote-unquote clean meat? Are there some viable options that can safely transition away from animal exploitation and still cater to our devolved and brutalized palates? Yeah, there are some ingenuities that are promising. You know, I myself am a vegan. The world's not all on the same page, okay? We got to recognize that the majority of us are still kind of lagging behind in our understanding of true nutrition and health science, right? Is there some promise through this new emerging technology? It seems like there could be, yeah. And the part of me that knows that if you're doing something that is helping to eliminate the exploitation of animals, then that could be a good thing, right? Here's an interesting video that you can check out. It's a video about producing amino acids from fermentation, right? Yeah, check it out.
NASA did some serious research on how to feed astronauts on long-duration missions. They worked out how to create nutritional proteins from the carbon dioxide exhaled by the astronauts. Research sat on a shelf. Until recently, that is. We're going to look at some companies that are actually creating protein and other nutrients virtually from thin air. Plants soak up water and minerals from the roots and CO2 from the air. The plant then combines the hydrogen with the CO2 pulled from the air to create carbohydrates in the form of sugars, facilitate through a complex chain of chemical reactions a variety of proteins. Remember the plants at the bottom of the food pyramid? Well, it turns out that they aren't the only things in nature that can turn CO2 and hydrogen into carbs and proteins. Microorganisms can do it too. In particular, these little guys called hydrogenotrophs, and that companies such as Solar Foods and Air Protein are now working to make real. They essentially take hydrogen and CO2 right out of the air and ferment them into proteins, vitamins, and minerals you'd find in, say, beef. And those two main ingredients are pretty easy to come by. You put the microbes in a bioreactor, feed them, and instead of beer, you get protein. What do you feed them? Air and electricity. with virtually zero environmental impact. Air Protein closed a $32 million Series A round led by, appropriately I think, the venture arms of agribusiness giant Archer Daniels Midland and tech giant Google. Chicken-like product that they call Air Meat. Might want to work on that name. Anyway, Solar Foods is currently working with about 29 million euro of funding and are currently in the permitting process for the construction of their first commercial-scale demonstration factory. They have plans to forge partnerships and initially site factories in areas with cheap electricity and issues with food security. Okay, we'll be able to make all we need, and it's super efficient, but let's face it, beef bourguignon it ain't. Protein, vitamins, dietary fibers, and fats made from air, tasteless powder. Who wants that? The wholesale ingredient market, that's who. Protein supplements. Protein powders, protein bars, protein shakes and the like, $1 billion in 2020. Soline could also go into pasta, baked goods, and serve as a base ingredient for the rapidly growing plant-based and cultured meat industries.
For anyone with any sense of natural dietary value, this section of the same video reveals the obvious drawback of approaches like this. The debate on whether any of this has any advantage to true health is ended immediately once we realize that this is the realm of artificial, ultra-processed food, which has been the bane of human existence for as far back as we can remember in modern times. So the more we divorce ourselves from thinking along these lines of out-of-control scientism, the better for our health. But is an option like this helpful or beneficial to us in at least going in the right direction? Maybe. Can't deny that if it helps to eliminate animal exploitation. But the problem is it's the forces that control and manipulate these agencies. That is where the whole thing has to be approached with extreme caution. Right? Are you surprised to find that Google has their hand all up in this? Come on. What's really bothersome is that vegan influencers out there are going to be on board with this. And I don't like to name names directly, but look, check out some of these clips from this vegan documentary by a very popular plant-based YouTube channel. It's a channel that I like watching from time to time. There's great lectures there. There's great interviews. They've got a lot of good stuff. The approach to veganism is completely worldly, conventional, cookie cutter, nothing that's investigating the actual deeper laws of vitality, right? Nothing like that. This is just cookie cutter, jump on the bandwagon, take me wherever you're going, UN, right? It's that version of vegan advocacy, right? Anyway, this documentary, it's just like, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. It's just hook, line, and sinker, completely 100% sold on the subversive United Nations version of veganism that they're advocating. I'll reiterate, it's not all bad, of course. You're going to find lots of actual good information, concepts, and ideas here.
We subsidize farmers with billions of pounds every single year.
Explain that a little bit more.
Absolutely. So subsidies are taxpayers' money. So when we pay our taxes, a portion of that money is given to certain industries. It's given to fossil fuel companies. It's also given to the agricultural industry as well. We're subsidizing farmers so much that 90% of their profits is coming from the taxpayer. So this is not an economically viable system without the help of the taxpayer.
It's the classic formula where you've got a good ethical movement with valid points injected with the taint of a deceptive lie.
If the cereals fed to animals were instead used for direct human consumption, we could feed an extra 3.5 billion people every year.
And if we simply allowed that land to rewild.
Alternative protein.
Alternative proteins raised $5 billion in 2021.
You've just eaten 2 vegan sandwiches.
Vegan cuisine is growing in popularity.
Government unveiled plans to reduce livestock numbers by 30% in a bid to combat climate change.
The climate is changing. That we need to step up our collective efforts to make sure that we counter that and that we mitigate it.
Have to be significantly.
We're about to see a similar techno-ethical shift.
Alternative protein to replace every single animal protein.
One company is trying to put the meat back in meat alternatives, and some investors are betting big.
Plant-based products gain real estate in bio-identical precision fermented dairy,
We grow our protein heir to meat.
Meat company JBS invested $100 million into innovative, animal-free alternative protein.
Come together to support all types of alternative protein.
The article goes on to directly quote a Cargill employee. Cargill is committed to growing our protein portfolio, and this includes investing in and growing our traditional protein business. Protein, there's that word again. Oh my God, euphemisms. They're committed to growing their traditional protein businesses. That means the way they've always exploited animals. Our commitment is reinforced by nearly $600 million in recent investments in conventional animal body parts in North America alone, including the acquisition of 5-star custom food. Sorry, I added animal body parts. I'm not interested in playing the euphemism game, right? Including the acquisition of 5-star custom foods, modernization of our turkey hatchery in Virginia, and the conversion of our Columbus plant into a cooked meats facility. Okay, blah, blah, blah. I don't need to keep reading all that. It ends off by saying, does this sound like Cargill is planning to wind down its mass extermination of animals anytime soon? If so, why would Cargill sink in an additional $500 million into its factory farming operations? There's simply no evidence that the meat companies are planning to get out of the business of exploiting and killing animals. Rather, as the human population continues to grow and as demand for meat increases, there's simply no evidence that meat companies are planning to get out of the business of exploiting and killing animals. Okay, now, away from the whole clean meat and sell meat, cultured meat, all that kind of stuff, we also have the issue of the same old players in the game, all right? A lot of the same old companies that have always been market leaders in food production. Food of all kinds, right? Animal products as well. You find the same old players are buying up and just swallowing up vegan companies, smaller vegan companies, and just adding them to their portfolio. There's a whole list of them. Field Roast specializes in artisan vegan meats and cheeses. It's now owned by Greenleaf, a subsidiary of Maple Leaf Foods. Light Foods, subsidiary of Maple Leaf Foods. Gardein, now owned by ConAgra Brands. Oatly is apparently a standalone brand, and that does milk alternatives and other dairy-free products. Silk, however, very, very popular brand, Silk. I'm sure you know about Silk. They're owned by Danone, Multinational Food Products Corporation. Alpro, another vegan company, also owned by Danone. So Delicious Dairy-Free. These guys do vegan ice cream and yogurt alternatives, also owned by Danone. Daiya, everybody knows about Daiya, very famous for their vegan cheese products. Daiya was taken over by Otsuka Pharmaceuticals. The massive Nestle Corporation, they swallowed up Sweet Earth Foods, which is another vegan manufacturer. And of course, as time goes on, this will just get worse, right? It's going to be more consolidation. And we might find at some point that a lot of the vegan companies that we're buying these products from are just going towards the big corporations that are invested in clean meats and animal agriculture anyway, right? So they're just broadening their portfolio. Okay, getting away from the food issue now, I want to bring up this subject just to show you, again, give another example, because many of you in the community have seen many presentations, many lectures, many videos, lots of content on YouTube and other platforms that deal with vegan issues. And surely this subject has come up, and you've heard these terms and buzzwords coming from lecturers and content creators before. So the Wildlands Project, okay? What is the Wildlands Project? What is the Wildlands Project? What is rewilding? What is that? All right. So rewilding is a process of returning an area to its completely wild, uncultivated, and natural state, uninhabited by man, okay? Now, the Wildlands Project initiatives had their origins in the 1970s during the ramp-up of the environmental fear-mongering. During the 70s, a soon-to-be radical environmentalist, Dave Foreman, worked for the Wilderness Society in Mexico, and he helped create the radical environmentalism movement in the 1980s. In 1991, David Sewell, a conservative biologist, merged his science-based work with Foreman's direct action approach, and they created what became the Wildlands Project. And so this environmentalist, Dave Foreman, what he did was he established a movement called the Earth First movement. And since its formation in 1980, Earth First has lived by the slogan, "No compromise in defense of Mother Nature." Its followers have been known to chain themselves to trees, lie down in front of bulldozers, and vandalize the machinery. Many Earth First followers don't take part in the eco-sabotage, but the tactics advocated by the group had made it the target of FBI scrutiny. Foreman is awaiting trial of charge on conspiracy to tear down an electrical tower. Okay, anyway, the point is, so you had this radical environmentalist movement popping up in the 80s, okay, who Dave Foreman helped in creating. But you also had, on the governmental side, you had the globalist UN Agenda 21, Agenda 2030 impetus building up during this time. And they were creating and formulating how they were going to structure the environmentalist fake threat moving on into the 21st century. So now here comes this radical environmentalist doing all sorts of, direct action stunts. Tree spiking, I mentioned tree spiking here. Tree spiking is when you take a long spike, metal spike, and you hammer it into a tree at a diagonal angle. And you hide it, right? You hammer it in and hide it so that when loggers come around to chop down the tree, they won't notice this massive spike in the tree, and their chainsaws, as it goes into the tree, will hit these massive nails, splinter and fracture and damage the equipment and whatnot. So it's to disincentivize loggers from cutting down trees, right? So anyway, since government knows that they can't advocate for those types of approaches, right? But they like the idea, they like the energy of that movement. What they did was the governmental elements started working with the radical environmentalists, and what they came up with was the Wildlands Project. So this article does a good job of summarizing a fairly shocking report, a report called the Commission on Global Governance, a report from a group called the Commission of Global Governance. Now, if a group with that name is not enough to raise some red flags in your mind, you're not paying attention. The Commission on Global Governance? Okay, so the Commission on Global Governance made up a report called Our Global Neighborhood, a report of the Commission of Global Governance. And so this article basically just summarizes what this insidious report says. And again, if you don't catch the signature of evil in the words, you're not paying attention. You need to be able to read between the lines so you can root out where evil's hiding in the subtleties of the language. Okay, so the article goes on. Conservative environmental scientists have known for years that global forces behind the scenes were moving towards one world government, but it was not until recently that it was possible to see the comprehensive plan published in an official document offered to the world entitled Our Global Neighborhood, the report of the Commission on Global Governance. As evidenced by the statement quoted above, its recommendations are arrogantly bold, an indicator of the confidence the radical environmentalists have at this point about their chances for success in implementing their agenda. They are also frighteningly serious. Okay, so this document exposing this, it goes on. In this special report, we are presenting the hard copy, black and white evidence of the radical environmentalists' plan to relegate the politically powerless among the human race to limited areas set aside for human habitation in the decades ahead. This is essentially what the Wildlands Project is. The Wildlands Project is given the coat of nobility by selling you on the fact that they are all invested in saving animals, protecting the environment, right? All the things that are just so noble. Oh my God, so vegan. Oh God, there it is again. I'm so sorry. So they're selling you on that, but really what's happening is They are taking people off their land, right? Slowly, people that live out in the country, out in the rural areas, making life as difficult and challenging as possible, for people living in rural areas, and pulling them into cities, in human habitation zones, okay? That's what the Wildlands Projects is all about. Okay, carrying on, it cannot be too strongly emphasized that this radical agenda designed to control not just the land, but all the human activity as well under the Wildlands Project, at least 50% of the land area of America would be returned to core wilderness areas where human activity is barred. So it's not that rewilded land is rewilded in a harmonized way for humans and animals to coexist. No. It's humans are restricted, right? Barred. Like drones monitoring and, this is a restricted area. Leave that type of nonsense, okay? That's what this is all about. It's controlling humanity in designated zones where that control is easily exerted on humanity. And those wild areas, well, we don't need to worry about it because those are off limits. But it has nothing to do with any noble quest for humanity. It has everything to do with control. All right? Control of people, just like any inanimate asset in some warehouse owned by some company. Okay, so here's a direct quote. You got to listen to this. The direct quote from the report called Our Global Neighborhood. The impulse to possess turf is a powerful one for all species, yet it is one that people must overcome. Right. Sensitivity over the relationship between international responsibility and national sovereignty is a considerable obstacle to the leadership and at the international level. Let me read that again. Sensitivity over the relationship between international responsibility and national sovereignty is a considerable obstacle to the leadership at the international level. Okay, do you know what that means? What it means is your identity, your national identity, your sovereignty as a nation. So let's just say you're Canadian. Let's just say I'm Canadian, right? What they're saying is that the mindset of being Canadian and being nationalistic and having a sense of belonging in my home nation, they're saying that ideology is at odds with a cabal of globalists that want to control the world. That's what that's saying. That's it, right? You need to decode these euphemisms that they use in the confusing language that sounds great at the outset, but that's what they're talking about. And with that national pride comes the rights, have your borders protected, no foreign governments can come and just legislate the crap out of your nation, right? All that stuff. No, they're saying, yeah, all that, yeah, get rid of all that because that interferes with the global tyranny that we want to design. Anyway, so it's a considerable obstacle to the leadership at the international level. Sovereignty is a principle which will yield only slowly and reluctantly to the imperatives of global environmental cooperation. Oh my goodness. Sovereignty, right? The actual element of true freedom that all beings are gifted with. Sovereignty, internal sovereignty. They're saying sovereignty is a principle that will yield, submit, only slowly and reluctantly, you don't want to give it up, to the imperatives of global environmental cooperation. What they're saying is that they are going to use environmental legislative tyranny to submit your sovereignty at the feet of globalist power. That's what that sentence says. Okay, so you can see on the slide here what the Wildlands Project, and you can go to the Wildlands Network, okay, which is the main website that pushes the Wildlands Project. The Wildlands Project, I think they might have changed the name There's like several different euphemisms. See, they always change the names, the labels, as evil does this all the time. Take eugenics, for example. The label eugenics got a bad rap because of the whole Nazi business in World War II. So what did they do? Nothing changed. Everything proceeded as normal. They just changed the labels. Give it a facelift. Not even a facelift. Just give it a new name. Just give it a new name. Call it something else. Call it Planned Parenthood. Call it strategic agricultural engineering. All right? Just call it whatever you want. Give it different names, but it's the same thing. So Wildlands Project might have, if it fell into disrepute because of people being aware of the evil afoot, they'll just change the name and proceed as planned. Anyway, you can go to the Wildlands Network and you can see what they're all about. So what they'd like to do is they like to set up corridors. Okay, so corridors across the continent. These are wildlife corridors. It reads each of the 21 bioregions has been divided into 3 zones. Wilderness area designated as a habitat of plants and animals. Human habitation, use, or intrusion is forbidden. Number 2, there are buffer zones surrounding the wilderness areas, limited and strictly controlled. Human access is permitted within this buffer zone. And then the cooperation zones, the only zones where humans will be permitted to live. You don't necessarily see that on the map you see out here on the left. On the map on the left, the bigger map, that's what you'll see on the Wildlands Project website right now. Okay. And so that is just showing you these corridors, these wilderness corridors that they've identified, right? Corridors where animals will travel, all right, and will migrate to and from. Like a highway, kind of like a wilderness highway. So they're just showing that there on the map. The smaller map corresponds more to what I just read. The smaller map here, this is one of the original maps that was drawn up by the Wildlands Project, Dave Foreman and his buddies, okay, like we talked about just earlier. So all those red areas, those are corridors. Sorry, if that's the term that's I think they like to use. Wilderness corridors, right? Corridors meaning just a channel where animals can pass. So all that red that you see on the map, those are all restricted areas for human beings. That's the original design. This is the original plan of the Wildlands Project. All restricted. And then the yellow are the buffer zones. And then there are only pockets of acceptable human habitation zones. Okay. Why did I just go into that? Why are we talking about that? Again, I'm going into that because the vegan influencers, the plant-based community at large, you are going to hear them use terminology that supports projects like this. You'll hear it all the time. I hear it all the time. I'm not going to name names, but the vegan influencers that I like to listen to, that I like to learn from, you will hear these terms being used by them and advocated by them so often. And it's important to know because these are terms that have been inculcated into us by nefarious organizations that do not have your best interest at heart. Influencers parrot these terms and phrases that have been devised by social engineers and psychologists and think tanks who know what make you tick, and they exploit your inability to recognize that they are doing the thinking for you. We've got to rewild for the planet. Oh, invest in this because these things are just so carbon neutral, and carbon neutral is going to be what saves the planet. Oh my gosh, it's so virtuous. I can feel my veins turning green. Rewilding, so green, so sustainable. Oh, it's so vegan. By going vegan, I'm being sustainable and carbon neutral. Oh my god, that's so virtuous. You know what? No, hold on. Screw this. Just show you guys how bloody vegan I am, right? Green shirt and a green hat, right? Because green is like totally vegan, and the more green you wear, the more vegan you are, the more you can stop climate change. Oh my god, what's wrong with me? I'm so sorry, guys. I'm getting carried away. Okay, so the point is, I wanted to talk about the Wildlands Project because I've heard it many times out of the lips of influencers. And we need to be responsible as influencers to know how the world around us works, so we're not promulgating ideas that are destructive to humanity out into the minds of the people that we're speaking to.
The Wildlands Project is a very well-funded effort to lock up as much as 50% of the United States in the wilderness. It is heavily promoted by most environmental, non-governmental organizations. The International Union for the Conservation of Nature, the IUCN, helped create it in the mid-1980s to be the foundation of the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity, which the IUCN wrote in 1982. The IUCN is an international group of over 1,000 NGO and government members.
Environmental groups have effectively created a public image as organizations caring for helpless species and protecting environments. If fully exposed, would be opposed by the majority of the people. In fact, most people supporting these organizations are not aware of their long-term objective, even though it is no secret. Take a look at the Wildlands map. It defines where environmentalists want to take America in the very near future. The areas in red will be off-limits to humans. The areas in yellow represent buffer zones, where limited use is allowed primarily to travel to and from populated areas. The areas in green are where normal use by humans will be allowed. However, by the environmentalists' own admission, these normal use areas would be restricted. It is being implemented quickly through innocent-sounding programs that most Americans support. Wilderness areas, critical habitat for endangered species, wetlands, roadless areas, national heritage areas, and other restrictive programs are sold to the public as necessary to protect nature.
The impacts of climate change are wide-reaching. Urban and developed areas adjacent to undeveloped wildlands. The challenge of balancing climate resilience for both people and nature. Climate resilience, climate resilience, climate resilience, climate resilience, science-informed climate adaptation. The CWC project is funded by the California Strategic Growth Council, and it's a collaborative initiative between San Diego State's Institute for Ecological Monitoring and Management and the Climate Science Alliance. Climate adaptation and habitats to persist and adapt to climate change. Our project is to produce science in service of climate resilience, and the connected landscapes that are needed to allow species and habitats to persist and adapt to climate change.
Climate adaptation, climate resilience,
climate planning,
to our climate education program known as Climate Kids.
Are you ready to be part of something wild, Earth's rewilding network? Welcome to the world's largest rewilding map.
What all these programs have in common is extinguishing the private property rights of American citizens and transferring the control of the property to elite land trusts or directly to the government. Private property is quickly being eliminated. Environmentalists have scared Americans into thinking that if we continue to live as we are today, then the globe will be covered with development. However, government data shows that only 6% of America's land mass is currently developed. 6%. Only 3% of America is classified as urban. Yet 77% of all Americans live in these urban areas. The rest is still largely untouched by humans. The problem is not that our nation is being overdeveloped. The problem is as old as time. It is about who will own the land. Who will own the land? Either you have the right to own property, or you are property. Karl Marx wrote in the Communist Manifesto, "The theory of the communist may be summed up in the single sentence, abolition of private property." America's founding father, John Adams, stated, "Property must be secured, or liberty cannot exist."
We do not want to be on the same bandwagon as the United Nations globalist version of veganism. And look, just for poops and giggles, if you wanted the no-brainer approach to understanding that there's at least something fishy going on here, well, you can look at silly cookie-cutter articles like this. 5 ways Bill Gates is making the world a little more vegan. God, I'm so vegan. Oh my God, why am I doing that? Oh. Bill Gates is heavily investing into Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods and investing in Motif and a whole bunch of other things, right? Now, if we've learned anything about Bill Gates and what he funnels his money into, if you were living under a rock in 2020, 2021, 2022, then what do you want me to say? I mean, if this hasn't become obvious by now, well, it should be. It should be obvious. Anyway, so this guy's a major player in this. Major player. Whether it's through food, whether it's through environmentalism, whether it's through pharmacological chicanery, they're going to keep working and keep fighting in that direction, and we got to be on guard. Okay, so essentially what this boils down to is it boils down to a type of orientation towards veganism that is distinct from the type of truly holistic, proper, and appropriate variety of approaches to veganism and all that it entails. Almost two different styles. I don't want to fractionalize. I don't want to make groups, but really, okay, we got to be able to call a spade a spade. What my advice for people in the interest of serving humanity, in serving the cognitive and spiritual development of the human spirit, all right, in moving forward, in progressing and becoming better stewards to the planet, my advice would be to not be a vegan of the world, okay? If you are a vegan of the world, then you are on board with everything that I've gone through in these lectures. A vegan of the world, a worldly vegan, you believe in man-made global warming. Okay? You also believe that carbon is some sort of pollutant. And more importantly, you believe that adopting veganism somehow allows you to fight global warming. You somehow believe that adopting veganism is a way to combat climate change, which is a non-term. It's a made-up term. Climate changes every second, every single second of the day. So by waging a war against climate change, you have to read between the lines. See what evil is actually telling you. If climate change is bad and it requires government to come in and step in and marshal, it means that they can control everything, because climate constantly changes naturally from second to second. So it's a psychologically subversive term, climate change, because it means everything. You're happily supportive of all the clean meat, cell meat, cultured meat, whatever, it doesn't matter. You're all for that. And you're supportive of all the UN Agenda 21 environmental protocols. This is what I would kind of package together. Typical cookie cutter vegan of the world. The type of vegan who has accepted the conventional narrative being given to them, shoveled on them by mainstream media and other bought and paid for sources. Okay? My advice would be to not do that. Don't follow the world. The world is going to mislead you. This slide here, I'm not even given a label. I don't want to give a label, just regular, responsible, well-adjusted individuals. People who have a semblance, an idea of the world that they're living in, enshrining true values, responsibility to yourself, responsibility to your health, responsibility to your family, all that stuff, okay? I'm not saying that if you're a VOW, I'll call him a VOW, a vegan of the world. I'm not saying that if you're a VOW, you don't have responsibility to your family and all. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just trying to show you clearly that there's a distinction between the globalist version of veganism that they hope you buy and an approach to veganism that has nothing to do with that and is actually much, much better for not only you, your health, the health of your family, but also for the world and for the environment, okay? It's a psychological war, and, we don't want to let these organizations do our thinking for us, and so we become prisoners to these edicts, all right? To the psychological programming coming from these organizations, all right? We become prisoners to that. Social movements, by and large, okay? Any big social movement, big social change that hits the world consciousness in any kind of coordinated way, you have to know that these are always steered and guided by forces that don't have your best interest at heart. There's going to be the signature of evil written in there somewhere that you have to be able to pick out. And you have to be mindful not to blindly follow the world. If you find that your behaviors and your actions are following the accepted narrative of the world, you probably want to be circumspect. Start asking some questions, because almost guaranteed you're going to be being led astray. And that's not a phenomenon of just modernity. Even biblically, we have admonitions and cautions against following the world, because the world is against God. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. It means don't be conformed to the world. Conform yourself to the will of God, right? To the law of nature. Conform yourself to the actual values. That is your master, not the world, teaching us that. Denying ungodliness and worldly lusts, we should live soberly, righteously, and godly in this present world. Soberly. Soberly, what does that mean? Not having your mind corrupted by influences, adulterers and adulteresses. Do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Whoever therefore wants to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. These are biblical admonitions against following the cookie-cutter, vain, worldly philosophies that everyone accepts, pushed and promulgated by the governments and the world leaders. Even back then, higher philosophical thought knew better than to follow the ways of the world. You are of God, little children, and have overcome them, because he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. They are of the world, therefore they speak as of the world, and the world hears them. What's being taught in that verse is that the world is going to be more receptive to people that echo the ideas and the philosophies of the world. Bigger platforms, bigger plant-based channels and whatnot that just toe the line. Would you be surprised that they're bigger and more popular? No, you wouldn't, because that's how it works.
The public conversation in a way that it never has before.
This is not a utopian vision, this is the shift many...
Aligning your ideologies with the true tenets of nature, the true laws of God, is always going to be unpopular. It's going to be unpopular because you wage war against people's individual, personal, adulterated habits, lusts, superstitions, preferences, comfortable habits, addictions, attachments, etc., etc., etc. In conclusion, we want to say that the vegan philosophy is a noble philosophy. It's something that I would encourage everybody to adopt. But that philosophy has been taken over. It has been hijacked. It's been commandeered by insidious forces that are at the helm of guiding humanity down a track that we don't want to go down. This series has not dealt with any of the implications of whether you should or should not use mock meats, processed plant products, and all the rest. If they're truly cruelty-free, well then that's wonderful. Right, that's great. What I would advise, however, is that that's not a default position that you should settle with. If that's where you are in your stage of development in using those things, what I would suggest is that you not be comfortable in staying there. You would want to only stay there for as minimal a time as possible until you transition away from those things. The reason I suggest that is because I see the vegan of the world approach as being inherently fractious to the mind, because what they're saying is that you can go from a standard American diet filled with processed meat products and all of the palate perverting tastes and pleasures that are associated with that diet. Well, all you need to do is you need to follow an Agenda 21 vegan version of a diet, go through no discipline, no responsibility at all, have all the things that you loved over here, and you can still be noble and virtuous. And so your philosophy tells you that you have a firm position against animal exploitation and against the use of animal products, yet your tastes in your body and your nervous system are all screaming to your mind, you love the taste of animal body parts. And so by corrupting your tissue by eating vegan cheeses and vegan sausages and tofurkeys and all that, you're creating a situation that is fractious for your mind. It's like you're pulling yourself apart at the transverse plane. Body going one direction, the mind saying another thing. We don't want that. We want our mind and our body unified in this comfortable, harmonized version of veganism, where our bodies aren't addicted to the tastes of the past. They have accepted the splendors of the actual taste of the true foods that sustain human vitality, and accepting those tastes and accepting those pleasures. That is a more unified way, a more holistic way to proceed in the vegan philosophy. There's nothing actually morally wrong with using plant-based alternatives that taste like meat products, and there's nothing really wrong with that. What this lecture has been all about, simply about the version of veganism that is being forced on our minds. That's it. And how it is hijacking and it's using those institutions, those companies that produce those things to steer you in a direction that you don't want to go. That's all that this is about, okay? As for whether we should or should not use these products, or whether they are or not cruelty-free, that's for some other debate, some other topic, some other time. Someone else can take that on. I don't need to get into those nitty-gritties. I'm just here to tell you what is actually planned by the worldly forces, okay? My lovelies, thank you so much for taking part in this lecture series with me. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. And if I were to conclude with just one bit of advice, which is something that maybe I should flesh out in a more dedicated video later on, one bit of advice: if you just obey. Just obey God's law and things tend to work out in your favor. That's all I'll say. Guys, I love you very much. Thank you so much again. And we will see you next time here on the FreeMelon Society for whatever is up next on this channel. Okay? Love you very much. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.